the youngest daughter of Kingi Tuheitia has been announced as the new Māori Queen. At just 27 years old, she succeeds ahead of her two older brothers, and a huge response from those gathered at Tūranga Waiwai Marae in Ngaruawahia. And, of course, commemorations continue today as King Tuheitia laid to rest in the cemetery at Taupiri Manga, and there'll be a procession from the marae to his final resting place, but also a day of celebration today for those involved with the Kingitanga movement. The king is dead, long live the queen, it seems. So, interesting times indeed. Joining us on the program now from the Salvation Army Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit, Lieutenant Colonel Ian Hutson. Ian, kia ora, good morning. Thanks for your time today.
Sure, good to be here.
It is a significant day for Māori, particularly for Kingitanga, of course. But I understand there were representatives of the Salvation Army who were also involved with the tangi earlier in the week.
Yes, territorial leaders, Commissioners Mark and Julie Campbell went there with a group of Salvationists from around the country, and particularly more local ones there. So yeah, quite a large group there, and others going on other days more individually, other days during the week. So really important and, a really big event, huge influence in our nation.
Yeah. Certainly a big legacy to follow with Tuheitia, and perhaps significant, such a young person, such a new generation represented for the new Māori Queen, and no doubt we'll find out more about her as the day continues. But wanting to focus in particular about a bit of a disturbing announcement recently. The government has said that they are needing to make cuts to government services, that some of the backroom jobs need to go in Wellington with the government departments. There were claims that this would not result in cuts to frontline services, but it seems that is not the case with the funding cuts, particularly for service providers, for people really doing it tough in our communities, including but not limited to the Salvation Army. What's the situation there, Ian?
Yeah, well, we've had a number of things in recent weeks or months, but one of the latest ones is that a funding that the Salvation Army received, and other providers from Oranga Tamariki, particularly looking to support vulnerable whānau, young people who are on the edge of or referred by Oranga Tamariki, people that they don't have the capacity to deal with. We've lost contracting throughout the country. 18 staff were expecting to be laid off.
Wow.
Or I'm not sure if that'll be the outcome, but it's hard to see what other options there are. But the thing about that, of course, is that it takes years to build up the rapport, the trust of people to come for help.
Mm-hmm.
It takes years to build up a service that can actually help, in a way that's effective. And then it's just suddenly cut like that. And it's been very disturbing to see, because we, on a number of levels, one is how long it takes to get the expertise and everything together, and then to have it sort of cut from under you, but then to the actual people themselves that are receiving the service, where will people go now?
Has there been any announcement from the government or from the various government departments as the reason for the cuts? Is it just a continuation of these are tough economic times, we're needing to pull back? Or, Salvation Army, I suppose, as contractors along with others, is it just, your contract isn't been renewed, no explanation given?
Not given big, huge amounts of explanation. We had another contract with financial mentoring, same sort of thing, and people would be saying well, they didn't say anything directly about us, but it was said that people weren't meeting contracts, and we knew that we were meeting contracts. So we don't know if others weren't, but I mean, whatever the reason is, it seems brutal, and it doesn't seem as though there's something replacing it, and mostly it disturbs us because we know that the extent of need is significant, and we don't know where that need is going to be met after this. So that's our big concern. I guess it also, and on top of that, there seems to be cuts happening, like I say, across a number of areas. And I wanted to highlight it from a church perspective, because I think churches are often where society really needs and calls on churches. But at the time when it seems like we're getting more levels of poverty and whatever happening, it looks to me like the places that are set up to respond are being further weakened and able to meet that need that is growing.
I mean, from a raw economics point of view, some people might say, well, hey, it is tough, but times are tough. If you haven't got the money, you haven't got the money. But what doesn't make sense to me, Ian, what doesn't literally add up, is the government is prepared to borrow money for other programs. In the last week, we've also had announcements of how many billions of dollars we're spending on road infrastructure. I'm not saying we shouldn't spend money on roads, but this isn't simply a matter of, well, there's no money available. This has to be seen as priorities. The other thing which really rattles me about this one, I suppose, is it's a false economy. Saving money here is going to cost the country and government services more money in the long term. Intervention with troubled young people, yes, there's a cost to that, and it's worth investing in my opinion. But if we don't do that, the cost of these young people growing up and being adults in trouble and in prison and in gangs, that's going to cost us more.
It's exactly the case. I mean, basically, the people that we're dealing with, we're not dealing with. These are complex cases, and the kind of whānau that needs real support. And the government, the National Party, was very strong on what they call the investment approach. And it's exactly these kind of people that need that kind of investment. If you want to turn the long-term cost of not investing in some of these people is huge. It could be years and years of all kinds of different, like you talk about crime and just a whole range of other things where you end up paying the cost of things when you don't deal with it when they're young. And also I guess we are really concerned about the level of abuse and that children and young people are experiencing. This is an important part of trying to address and at least mitigate the worst impacts that could happen in this area. So we are really concerned about this. And this is just one area, so it does where the cuts are happening. A big concern.
You and I have talked beforehand about the government's policies about being tough, getting tough on gangs, and whether or not that works. Honestly, one way of being tough on gangs would be to cut the supply. To cut the supply of disenfranchised young people who are looking for hope and support within a gang structure. If these are young people who are supported in a different way, then they wouldn't end up in gangs and in trouble. I suppose that's another way of getting tough on gangs, is supporting the work of the Salvation Army.
It is, and I don't want to only just focus on us, because there's a lot of other groups that got caught up in this as well. Community providers, but is exactly right. I mean, many of the people that end up in gangs are and in the recent Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse, a lot of the people that ended up in the homes and the pre-runners of things like they don't call it boot camps anymore, but
Yeah.
the people that ended up in programs like that were people that had gone through their oranga tamariki or whatever it was called back in the day, and progressed their way up to Borstal or whatever the thing, and then along the way joined gangs where they found the kind of support they thought that they found the kind of support they needed.
Yeah. I
They
mean,
didn't get it somewhere else.
just touching on the boot camps, or I mean, by any other name, I know they've moved away from the boot camps label, but actually, I mean, that's a key point. This is a government program which is being funded. This is a program which is unproven. In terms of the previous research and research overseas, these sorts of programs don't work. We've seen from years and years of practical results how well the programs that the Salvation Army and others do work. This seems like, hey, let's cut the program that is working to have a go at something which may or may not work.
That's right, and the program, I can't recall what it's called, but hugely expensive, huge costs, staff ratios, all of that. And then when they leave, the biggest risk with those programs is when that person leaves, they don't have all that kind of support wrapped around them, though they are trying to build that into this sort of program. But
do you think there's a causal link between the two, that in order to fund this new government program, which they campaigned on, well, in order to find the money for that, they're cutting these programs such as the one that you guys are involved with?
I would have, it would be speculation to say. I mean, I can't really tell, but it seems there's a lot of cuts happening. We were devastated by the financial mentoring services. Many of them got cut.
Yeah.
And we were not sure that's the end of it. And because we're hearing Te Whata Ora, there's a potential for that to affect mental health and addiction. Well, we've got addiction services, don't know if we're going to be affected or not, but those are community services that are helping at least turn lives around at the moment, that and the community's losing the capacity, the funding that they need to actually enable those things to happen. So it is a concerning time at the moment, because in some cases, some of those programs have been cut quite quickly, and with little time to figure out how to hand clients or whānau on. Yeah. And in some case with no obvious place to pass them on to. So big concern for us at the moment, both for our staff but also for the people that we serve. We really feel quite gutted, actually, about some of these things.
No, really, really tough stuff. And actually, at this point, I suppose there's not much that can be done about it. The decisions have been made. This is the new policy. Contracts aren't renewed. But hey, for people watching this, they can certainly express their disappointment to their local MP, if nothing else, and continue to pray for and support the wonderful work that the Salvation Army continues to do in communities and centres all across the Motu. Ian, thank you so much for the work that you do at the Social Policy Unit. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.